am your host, Captain Boring. I've gotten a lot of hate for that name recently. I'm not going to lie. Sitting next to, as always, CFBIII, Roberto, and his dog, Evie. So welcome to you both. Welcome to another rendition of the 4th and 1 podcast. You can listen to us anywhere you get your podcast, also on YouTube. If you go on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. If you follow us on Instagram at 4th and 1 podcast, add that podcast in there because the name of just 4th and 1 would be a terrible name for a podcast. So whoever owns that podcast, your podcast apparently has a terrible name and get a better name. Robert, we are after Christmas, before about 4 days prior to the semifinals. Alabama, Michigan in the Rose Bowl, Texas, Washington in the All-State Sugar Bowl. Bowl games are happening. However, I haven't really. The most I've watched of a bowl game was last night. I watched the entire fourth quarter of Louisville USC in what was a coming out party for Miller Moss, the backup to Caleb Williams. Malachi Nelson left transfer portal, the 5-star from USC. It could be Miller Moss's job with that performance last night. Have you watched? My question is twofold. Have you watched much bowl games? Second question, thoughts on Miller Moss from last night?
I've caught a couple pieces here and there. The bowl games, I kind of feel like there's almost no point to bowl games anymore.
Yeah.
Between the players leaving, I don't even know how you can take betting on these games anymore. Just because, you put a bet in and it's like, oh, this player's not playing. And it's like, that could be a big difference. But, I haven't caught really here and there. I see bits and pieces, but I haven't actually sat down and watched a full game, except for the USC game. But, it's definitely coming out for him because, it was, who at this point? No one knows anything about this kid. Played a great game. USC's defense, they held the team under 40 points. Come on. That's awesome. And could this be the spark they needed to go into next year? It's only the Holiday Bowl, but it was still something that they can build off of.
Joe Klatt, the game was on Fox last night. Joe Klatt was making comments that the USC defense, it was allowing a lot of yardage. Now, Louisville did give up 28 points, as you said. They gave up a bunch of yards in between the 20s, but they kind of locked it down when they needed to. They gave up 220 on the ground, 141 through the air, so that's 360. But there was no explosive plays, and whenever I watched USC during the course of the year, it was explosive play, explosive play, explosive play. So maybe this is a jump start. You're right. The teams that use their bowl time games outside of the college football playoff use that effectively, can really use it as a springboard into the following year, as you said. I have not watched many bowl games. I will admit to that. I may tomorrow night watch some Missouri, Ohio State, because that's probably the only New Year's Six bowl game where we won't have massive amount of opt-outs. And what I'm referring to is Georgia, Florida State. Between the two teams, there are 40 opt-outs of the Capital One Orange Bowl. The backup for Florida State isn't even playing in the game. So they're going to play third-string quarterback. Georgia's basically playing with, Carson Beck will play, but most of that defense is going to the NFL, not going to play. I assume Bowers is not going to play. I would tell Bowers to get away from playing in that game. And this is what you get when you don't make the college football playoff. You get quote-unquote, meaningless football. Who's watching right now the Commanders and the Giants in the NFL when they're both mathematically eliminated from playoffs? No one. Who's going to watch Auburn and Maryland in the Trans-Perfect Music City Bowl? We watch a lot of college football. We're probably the two people that watch the most college football that I know of. in my small circle. Now, granted, I don't know a lot of people, but you know. So thoughts on Georgia, Florida State? 40 players combined. Most of it's on the Florida State side, obviously, angry players. But thoughts on all those opt-outs?
I mean, it's going to be a boring game because it's almost. I mean, Georgia should win this game by almost a billion, but it's just like they're, for a game that honestly had so much behind it, just because it was Florida State wins that game and Michigan beats Alabama, whatever, with Texas and Washington. Now the argument can be made about, what could have been. But now that everyone is not playing, the game virtually means absolutely nothing. Georgia should just roll through it, and it's, oh well, this is what we figured would happen if they would have made the playoffs. And it's just like it kind of takes it away from the players that are young and the players who don't necessarily have like that NFL caliber, but are still good enough to play for like Florida State or Georgia.
Yeah, I sort of feel a little bad about it. Like, I know Ole Miss and Penn State in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, they're going to have all the players playing in that game. But Florida State obviously was just banking on making the college football playoff. And when they didn't, all the players, Keon Coleman, Johnny Wilson, I don't think that edge rusher, what's his name? Jared Verse. Yeah. He's not playing. I don't think Trey Benson's playing. So, like, all their stars were just banned. And I can't blame them. Go get a jump start on the NFL, on your NFL training. If you're an NFL GM, because I was thinking about this, and this is one of the thoughts I have in my mind. If you're an NFL GM, right, and you're looking at one of these high-level bowl games, so a New Year's Six game, and you have two people on the board. Let's just take Keon Coleman and another wide receiver comparable, and you grade them comparable. Would them opting out of their bowl games, Keon Coleman opted out of his, wide receiver B did not. Would that impact your draft board?
Yes and no. I mean, the way it would impact it for me is character.
Right.
Because now we're saying me and my career is more than what the team is. And it's like, okay, so when we go to the NFL, are you going to be the guy who only is there and wants to get the stats? Or is he like, I want to win a Super Bowl? Or am I, I didn't get the ball 3 times, like the 3 extra times when it could go to somebody else who has a better opportunity to score. But then in the same sense, it like doesn't, because you're looking at them. It's like, okay, well, they're kind of trying to take care of themselves to get them to their best possible self for the NFL. But in the same sense, that doesn't necessarily mean anything, because look at Ajabo. Like, Ajabo got hurt during the pro day.
Right.
Like, it wasn't like it was during the season. It wasn't during a bowl game. It's such a hard, like, do the right thing, do the wrong thing kind of deal. But, I mean, I get why they don't.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I think your pro day of David Ajabo ripping his Achilles at his pro day kind of speaks volumes there, because that's the big thing. You don't play in your bowl game, your quote unquote meaningless bowl game, to save yourself from injury. But then, you're running the 40-yard dash at your pro day, and your ACL just blows up, right?
Yeah.
Right on step number 2 or something like that. I mean, Jake Butt, he was slated to be a great tight end in the NFL, a TJ Hawkinson, a Travis Kelce. He was awesome at Michigan. And then in the Orange Bowl against Florida State, they had a great year, went out and played. 2nd ACL tear, went to the league, 3rd ACL tear. So his career then basically done, and he played handful of snaps in the NFL. So I get both of methods of it, but with 40 opt-outs, like if I'm the coach, I could see it both ways. But if I'm the coach and if I'm Kirby Smart, let's just take Georgia's end. I'm going to all my maybe outside of Carson Beck. Like if I'm going to all the guys who are considering NFL and I'm just going, you're just not playing. We're going to play backups. We're going to see what we have. Because what's the point? I mean, what are you playing for? No one's going to care that you won the Capital One Orange Bowl next year. 0 people are going to care about that. And those people that do bring it up, you know what? There's always they're going to be arguing with someone like you, Robert, and you're going to be like, oh yeah, against a Florida State team that didn't have 27 players, like, which is a valid point in this scenario. Alrighty, so let's kind of switch gears here. And we will transfer portal, really nothing going on besides Ole Miss cleaning up, right? Yeah. Like Ole Miss, they got the number one player, that edge rusher from A&M. His D tackle friend, I can't imagine he won't be just looking down that Ole Miss pathway as well, right? So yeah, Ole Miss, go ahead.
Like, I don't understand how they're doing it. How is Ole Miss getting everybody?
Yeah.
Like, not Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, Colorado. Like, it's Ole Miss. Of all teams, what is Lane Kiffin doing that he's just like, Mississippi?
Well, and how much money does Ole Miss really have?
Dude, they must have been planning this for years.
Yeah.
Because, like, so many.
They've gotten at least 5 of the top 10, 3 of the top 10. Are you on it right now?
6. Yeah. So they signed 1 5-star, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 4-stars, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 3-stars. Like 12 well, no, they signed 11. Yeah, from the portal. They signed 11, 1 left to go to Vanderbilt. But like, it's not like they went and signed like a bunch of 2-stars. Like, they are signing kids who are playing. Like,
who next year in the NFL draft in 2025 have first 3-round talent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, like and your point of they must have been planning on doing this for a while, I think is 100% accurate, because there's no other way. Because Ole Miss, great history, the Grove, tailgating, good school. They've never been a national power that I can remember. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but Ole Miss, when you say what are historically the college football national powers, right? Ole Miss would be dead near last before I mention them.
There was one year where I remember them being just outstanding. And was it Bo
Wallace? Wallace, yeah.
It was that year, because Mississippi State was good too.
Yes, that was the Dak Prescott, Dan Mullins, Mississippi State. Yep.
That was the last time I ever remember Ole Miss being like good. You know, like they were like, this team could make a big run. But I mean, all the kids that they're signing are from SEC schools.
Yeah, are from bigger brand-wise SEC schools for the most part. I mean,
A&M, Florida,
yep.
Tennessee,
bigger.
South Carolina, Mississippi State, Arkansas, Oklahoma, another Tennessee. They got one from Illinois, which is kind of weird, and one from Indiana.
An offensive lineman from Indiana?
No, it's a safety.
Oh, okay. Well,
and a corner from Illinois, which is weird. And then one from Southern Miss, but that's a lineman.
Okay. So I have no idea how we're doing this. 4 teams that have really not done anything in the transfer portal: Alabama, Michigan, Texas, Washington. I guess when you're king of the mountain, you don't need any help as of this moment. I'm sure after the college football playoff, coaches will really dive in and they'll kind of cherry pick some players as the second transfer portal window opens after the national championship game, which always confuses me to no end. Have one window of transfer portal signees. NCAA, get your act together for the umpteenth thousandth time. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, it is time. Probably a little bit of shorter episode because we've kind of BS'd our way to this point. But it is time to preview the college football playoff, ladies and gentlemen. I am so happy. I do say ladies and gentlemen a lot. It is my nervous tick. I don't even care, though, because I just don't care. So here we go. What do you want to start with? You want to start with sugar or the rose?
Let's start with the sugar.
Okay, sugar baby it is. Number 3, Texas, technically taking on the home team in number 2, Washington. But this is at the Caesars Superdome in New Orleans, LA. So Texas has the geographical advantage. I'm sure Washington fans will travel just as well. It'll probably be about half and half. I would assume no worse than 55-45. Quick recap on both teams, and then we will get into it. All right, let's start with the Washington Huskies. So the Washington Huskies, their offense just gangbusters out of the gate. Their first 4 games, they averaged above 45 points a game. They scored 56, 43, 41, 59 against Cal. And then it came back to earth a little bit. Arizona was a 7-point win. Arizona was a lot better. Oregon was a last-second field goal off the post miss. Come from behind win. Then they had then Michael Penix had 3 turnovers and they barely beat and needed to pick 6 to barely beat Arizona State. Stanford was a 42-33 win. That was late because that was really 35-33 before Washington got a pick 6. USC was 52-42. Utah was 35-28. Oregon State was a 2-point win on the road. Rainy. Robert called for the upset, didn't quite get there. Washington State was only a 3-point win, and then Oregon was a 3-point win. They've been playing close games ever since mid-October. You get a breath. You get to take on the Texas Longhorns team that, frankly, kind of had a season much like the Huskies. So they started with a 37-point win over, or a 37-point offensive explosion against Rice. Then they week 2 to Alabama, losing start of the fourth quarter, came back, made that a 10-point dub. Then they beat Wyoming. Then they beat Baylor 36-8. Then Kansas 40-14. That's when my ears went up. Kansas was number 24 at the time. They were really good and rolling. Then the loss in the Red River rivalry, 3 turnovers by Quinn Ewers. A 4-point loss, last second drive, Dylan Gabriel. Houston was a 7-point win. Again, Ewers left the game, more turnovers. BYU was a 35-6 win. Kansas State was a 3-point win in overtime. Again, 3 turnovers. That was a 20-point lead that evaporated because of turnovers. TCU, a 3-point win. Turnovers. Then Iowa State, 10-point win, close game. Texas Tech wasn't even close. And then in the Big 12 championship, 49-21. So, Robert, you think turnover is going to be the key for both these teams?
One of these teams is going to get smoked.
Right. I completely agree with you.
Because I'm looking at TCU's schedule from last year. Because both of these teams followed that same trend. Their first couple games, big wins. But then, like TCU, 7-point win, 3-point win, 10, 10, 10, 7, 1. Big win at the end by 40, and then they lost against Kansas State, and then they beat Michigan by 6. But, like, you look at Texas, like, they lose that 4-point game, but then 7. Big win for BYU. 3, 3, 10. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
like they followed that same trend. So I don't know which one it's going to be. I think Texas is going to have more explosive plays of 20 or plus more yards, and I think Texas is going to beat Washington because I think Texas is just going to play faster. I think the defense is better, and I think
So
they're going to play faster
all I've
again.
heard is that Texas defensive line, big, strong, SEC defensive line, right? That's all we've heard all year.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Then how come we're only getting 3-point wins against Big 12 teams? Okay. Dylan Johnson, the running back for Washington, he is the absolute key. When he is going and can take pressure off of Michael Penix and that explosive pass offense, the whole flow of the offense just works better. It doesn't all rely on Michael Penix's left arm. Here is by game, Dylan Johnson in the Pac-12 title game, 152 yards. Against a 3-point win against Washington, 82 yards. 2-point win against Oregon State, 89 yards. 7-point win against Utah, 104 yards. Week before, 10-point win against USC, 256 yards. So if Dylan Johnson is over 100 yards, they're probably winning by 7+ points.
Right.
You have to remember that what's his name? Jeremiah Brooks, I believe. The running back for Texas, Jonathan Brooks, the 1,100-yard back, him and Dylan Johnson, basically almost the same exact stat, is out. Texas's starting running back is out. Puts a little more pressure on Quinn Ewers. I would also like to point out that the receiver for Washington, the name is escaping me, so I'm going to go look it up real quick. That
Washington,
they got no, not Adunze, McMillan. That's it.
McMillan.
McMillan is back. He came back in the Pac-12 championship game. And was very much a problem for Oregon. They now have 2 receivers. Adunze is top dog in this system, but McMillan is that slot guy that you just want no part of. Adunze had 81 catches for 1,400 yards and 13 touchdowns during the regular season. Turnovers. Quinn Ewers only had 6 INTs, did miss 2 games. Penix did have 9 during the course of the season, but this is coming down to me on 2 fronts. The Washington offensive line and which quarterback is going to turn the ball over. So the offensive line for Washington, defensive line for Texas, and the quarterback in terms of turnover. Which unit for me is going to play better? I think that the secondaries are about the same. Again, I took you through the seasons. Washington and Texas, very similar. Whole bunch of one-score games, especially late in the season. Washington kind of felt like they were really surviving towards the end, where Texas, Big 12 title game, feeling like they were, charging ahead. I'm going to go kind of the other way. I'm going to go with a Huskies win, not a Husker. Huskies win here. They are the underdog. I just think I wrote my notes over the course of the season. Texas keeps messing around. I wrote that 4 or 5 times. Washington, I maybe wrote it 2 times. I just think Washington is more adept to play like this. Ewers, I'm going to bet he's going to turn the ball over. Washington's been very good about turning people over, especially late in the season. And the starting running back, Dylan Johnson, is going to do more work than the hodgepodge of characters that are going to be running the ball for Texas. So do you have an official pick on, besides winner, do you have an official bet pick for the ladies and gentlemen?
Like Texas -4,
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I actually would take the over for the game, the over
Okay.
63.5. I think it's going to be like a big score game.
I'm going to take Washington plus the 4.5. I think Washington probably wins the game outright, but the over of I have it at 62.5, so 62, 63, whatever you can get it at, ladies and gentlemen, get it, because I'm with you, Robert, as well. I think it is a lots of point affair, if you will. Okay, let's turn the page to probably what the most anticipated, one of the most anticipated games of the year. And that would be the Rose Bowl, presented by Prudential, which is just the dumbest name, but it is the Rose Bowl game. It is number 1 Michigan hosting number 4 Alabama. And all we have been hearing, or at least all I have been hearing, is that Michigan's getting romped because Big Ten coaches are who've played Michigan said that they found their niche, but Alabama's just bigger, stronger, faster. People forget that it was a 3-point win against USF, excuse me. It was a Hail Mary gravedigger 4th and goal from the 31-yard line that saved Alabama's chances against Auburn to even make the college football playoff. Then, because they play in the SEC, they get in over Florida State, etc., etc., etc. The number 1 Wolverines, Robert, do they have a chance against the Crimson Tide in Pasadena?
Oh, yeah, there's always a chance. I mean, you can never write either team off. I mean, it's going to come down to, can Michigan run the ball? If Michigan can't run the ball, Michigan is in trouble. And we've seen this. Because what's going to happen is Michigan is going to try and throw the ball at first. Well, actually, no. Scratch that. They're going to try and run the ball down Alabama's throat first, and we're going to go, okay, we got to do something else now. So then we're going to try and throw the ball. And what's going to happen is our left tackle is going to get beat. And then it's going to start almost how it was for Penn State, where we had to adapt to a system where we got to get the ball out quicker, and we're going to have to do some plays that we normally weren't doing during the regular season. If Michigan can run the ball against Alabama, Michigan has the best shot out of anybody to beat Alabama other than what Texas did. If we can't run the ball, that's going to be tough, because Alabama's offense they're good, but what makes them good is if Milroe can get the time to throw the ball deep. The running game isn't as scary as what it has been in recent years. It's still pretty good, but I think Michigan will be able to not stop it, but at least slow it down. But if we have to get pressure on Alabama, on Milroe, because when Milroe's under pressure, Milroe makes mistakes. But yeah, I mean, they have a chance. Like, the shot's always there. It's, are we gonna try and fake a field goal? Are we gonna make the mistakes? Is JJ gonna make the mistakes he made last year and throw pick after pick after pick and set TCU up? Are we going to miss the tackles?
Pull Micaiah and Madden, yes, 3 straight 100%. INT.
Is Michigan going to hurt themselves?
So let me run you through it, and then I want to pick right back up right where you left off. I want to run you through everyone's schedule. So the number 3 Wolverines, they started out without their head coach first 3 games, much like they finished the season, as you will. East Carolina, UNLV, Bowling Green, 33, 35-7, 31-6. He comes back, Rutgers, 31-7, and then things go. Nebraska, 45-7. Minnesota, 52-10. Indiana, 52-0. 52-7. Michigan State, 49-0. Purdue, 41-13. After the Michigan State game, Connor Stallions got involved in that whole thing. Then Penn State, 31 straight times they ran the ball, did not attempt to pass in the second half, or 8 minutes to go in the second quarter. Blake Corum was awesome. The offensive line was awesome. The defense was stifling. Maryland was a closer win as expected, but it was at Maryland on senior day. I can't really fault them there. JJ threw a pick at the end of the half. Ohio State, close at halftime, really pulled away late, and then INT2 sealed the game along with that running game. Then in the Big Ten title game, it was 26-0 against an Iowa offense that will probably go down as one of the worst offenses in the history of college football, given the era that they're in. Let's flip it over to Alabama's season. Harbaugh suspended, total of 6 games. First 3, last 3. In the middles, there's really where they hit their stride. Was it sign stealing? Who knows? Alabama, Middle Tennessee State, 56-0, 56-7, Milroe hot and bothered, going right at it. And then comes the mistakes that Robert was talking about. Jalen Milroe, 2 INTs, 2 or 3 INTs against Texas in a 10-point loss. Then it was 17-3. Milroe was benched. It was really 10-3, but Nick Saban wanted the score to look better, so he scored with like 15 seconds left. Then the defense just did defensive things against Ole Miss, 24-10. Mississippi State, they started to find their groove, 40-17. Oh, but then they go on the road to College Station, 26-20. Arkansas, they had a 21-point lead that they just let that slip away into a 3-point win. Tennessee was probably their best game of the year at home, 34-20. But that game was 20-3 after the first quarter. Should have been 28-3. LSU, Milroe's probably best game, 219 through the air, 155 on the ground. His best game against that vaunted, in quotes, LSU defense, not vaunted. Kentucky was a blowout. Chattanooga, obviously a blowout. I don't know if they were looking ahead to Georgia. Georgia was a 27-24 win where Milroe needed a miracle, but he did have 350 combined offensive yards, 259 through the air, 107 on the ground. And then in the SEC title game, number 1, Georgia, 27-24. Milroe again. But Georgia's offense kind of disappeared, whatever you want to say about that. So those are the teams. Your point about can Michigan run the ball, here's the thing. Nick Saban in semifinal games, Robert, his average margin of victory is 20.7 points. He just dismantles everyone he faces. And that's why people are picking Alabama, which is fine. You might have a couple members of this podcast that might also pick Alabama here in just a minute. Milroe can't make mistakes, neither can McCarthy. These teams are so similar. However, which defense do you think is better? Because
if you look
it
at
might
the
be a
past season,
toss-up.
I would give the edge to. I think it would be Michigan because the secondary's been better at times. I would say secondary would be a toss-up. That would be where my toss-up is. But I think Michigan's defensive line has been better, and I think their linebacker play has been better.
Yes. I would agree with you. I think Alabama's secondary is better. I think Will Johnson healthy, Mike Sanders still. Alabama doesn't scare me on the perimeter like it used to. Their leading receiver, Jermaine Burton, 35 receptions, 777 yards, 8 touchdowns. Let's compare that to Roman Wilson, 41 receptions, 662 yards, 11 touchdowns. Very similar. Leading passers, Milroe, 2,700 yards, 23 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Let's go to McCarthy. 2,600 yards, 19 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Rushing yards, McClellan, 800, 6 touchdowns. Corum, 1,000 yards, 24 touchdowns. Michigan has perfected their version of the tush push in college football from 1 yard out, and Blake Corum just eats him alive. I'm looking at two similar teams. If you're Michigan, you have to keep this one-score game. If you're going to lose, it's got to be you went out and you played your butts off, and Alabama just played their butts off. This has got to be a Georgia-Oklahoma Rose Bowl. That's what this has to be. One of the best games of the year if you're going to lose this game. FPI predicts Michigan 55.9% chance to win. Betting favorite right now is on ESPN Bets is the Wolverines -2. But everyone is picking Alabama. Everyone is picking Roll Tide Roll. Matchup where this comes down for me. I'm getting away from the trenches because these two teams are built. Strictly secondary work. Which secondary is going to be better? I'm going to say the Alabama secondary against Michigan group of wide receivers, tight end, Colston Loveland. Got to put that in there. And then Michigan secondary. How do they hold up against Jalen Milroe? Can they get pressure from the edge rushers? So the tackles and the edge rushers, when Alabama's on offense, wide receivers, tight ends against the linebackers and secondary of Bama when Michigan is on offense. All right, Robert, let's get down to brass tacks. Let's pick the Rose Bowl.
I always hate these games.
Yeah, everyone does, my dude.
Yeah. Because, last year I sat here and I said, this is what's going to happen. That son of a bitch, Quentin Johnston, is going to go down the sidelines with that ball, and Michigan's going to lose that damn game. And I shit you not, we missed that tackle, and that son of a bitch ran for a touchdown.
DJ Turner, setting the record for the combine, 40-yard dash, but misses one tackle.
I don't like picking for Michigan just because of I'm a superstitious guy.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And,
Go listen to previous episodes.
Yeah. And last year, that bit me on the ass. I'm picking Michigan this year.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, he's doing it.
Because there is nothing in this world I want more than to beat this goddamn SEC Alabama juggernaut team. I can't stand these fans. These fans think Alabama has been the greatest team in college football history. God forbid Bear Bryant, when his ass died, and Alabama was garbage. They were horrible, but they don't talk about that. Michigan fans, we own up to the Rich Rodriguez days, the Brady Hoke days, the days before Lloyd Carr, even sometimes with Lloyd Carr, Jim, we've been there. We understand. We accepted this shit, all right?
We're a reasonable bunch.
Yeah, Michigan's here. 1997, national champions. 2023/2024. The goddamn Lions are NFC North, right? North champions.
North, you got it.
Yeah. You know what happened the last time that happened? Michigan won the goddamn Rose Bowl.
Michigan won the Rose Bowl and the
You know
Natty.
what? And Michigan's winning the Rose Bowl. Screw the Tide. Time's over. Moses parts the Red Sea, and Jim Harbaugh walks his ass up there and says, "Suck it, Saban."
And
we get the roses.
And he makes them give him his trophy. All right, ladies. All right. I almost said it again. I do have a problem with saying that saying. I got to get away from that. All right. It's my turn. Robert, I'm much like you. I'm a superstitious guy. I picked against Michigan through and through. Okay? I've taken everyone plus the points. I am looking at a team, the number one team in the country who is probably the most embattled off the field team that's been ranked number one that I've ever witnessed. You got Stallions. You got Harbaugh. Harbaugh, they offered him, oh, by the way, they offered University of Michigan 10 years, $125 million, and all he can't do is take interviews this offseason in 2024. 2025, sure, go for it. He's be the highest paid coach. Nah, I'm going to think about this, Harbaugh says. J.J. McCarthy ain't thinking about the NFL draft. Harbaugh wanted to have a conversation. He said, no, my focus is on Alabama. Corum is saying it is natty or bust for this team. The leaders of this team, when they were freshmen and sophomores, they went to the Orange Bowl against vaunted number 1 Georgia, and they got the brakes blown off them. This is their time to rise and shine and tell the whole world what they got. This is a home game for Michigan. This is where they belong. In Pasadena, with the Parade of Roses happening just hours beforehand, they belong in the Rose Bowl. They made the Rose Bowl what it is. It might not be Big Ten, Pac-12, as we were all hoping, Michigan, Washington, but this is Michigan, Bama, ladies and gentlemen. And give me J.J. McCarthy and all the doubters and only throwing 1 touchdown last 5 games to have 280 yards plus. 3 touchdowns. Blake Corum's going for 88 and another 2 1-yard scores. Give me Big Blue to end the SEC reign of terror in the college football playoff. Give me the Michigan Wolverines to take down big old bad Bama in the Rose Bowl. And that's what it is, and that is how we will end it. Little early, but never a bad thing. I hope everyone has a fantastic New Year's Eve. Be safe out there. Have a fantastic New Year's Day. And we will see everyone later. And enjoy the college football playoff. Wash your hands, you filthy animals.